Trouble in some of your relationships, have an addiction you want to kick but haven't been able to, trouble with your kids or something in your family. Maybe you've been thinking about today's the day, now it's time to get some counseling.
Now what? What are the next steps? What are you supposed to do? How do you call and set up that first appointment? Well, it really is as easy as going to Google, typing in counselors near me, and giving a phone call. What likely is going to happen is the office manager will answer the call. They will ask you some brief questions and jot down, give you a time slot where you'll be able to come in, and then you sit down and you do an assessment. Well, they'll go over a lot of different types of information just to get a big picture of what's happening, how to best help. And there you start. There you'll decide with your counselor whether every week is good for you or every 2 weeks. Some people may even do once a month. It all depends on what we call the presenting problem or the main reason why you are going into counseling. Ultimately, find who you connect with. I think it's completely appropriate and okay to ask of your counselor or your future counselor questions about their worldview, questions about their past experiences with other people that maybe have similar presenting problems like you do. I think it's perfectly appropriate. You are paying money for this service. This is a service. These are professionals, and you should not feel or be manipulated at all to try to stay with one counselor or feel guilty that you're being too difficult of a client. You're not giving them a chance. No. What about questions in regards to spirituality? I think that many people, especially maybe in the South, because their Christianity, their religion is very important to them, and some fear that maybe that a counselor, in the intimacy of talking to them about personal problems, they're going to kind of impede their worldview on top of them. And so I think it is actually appropriate to ask your counselor in regards to their religious preferences. Maybe some people are going to disagree with me on that, and that's okay. I completely feel fine with people asking me what I believe about certain things because that's important to them. Spirituality is obviously a component of somebody's holistic, mental health, about who they are. And I think that if they really want to find out certain things regards to who is counseling them, that's perfectly appropriate. So there are many counselors out there that are Christian, that do believe in God, that do believe in a higher power. And I think that it's okay if you have some resistance in regards to wanting to know who is counseling your kid or who's counseling you in regards to what they believe philosophically about a few things. I think it's appropriate. Although, of course, counselors are trained to... Our training, part of our code of ethics is to not have our values be a part of the counseling process at all. Like, for example, if somebody didn't believe premarital sex was a bad thing at all. I mean, I personally, my value is that it's not ideal to have sex before marriage. But obviously, I counsel people that have sex before marriage all the time. And they don't know what I think about it, and that's not important because that's not a big deal. It doesn't matter what I think or what my values are, and that's part of our code of ethics, that we don't impose our values on the client. But if it's important to our clients, if they ask us different types of questions, I think that it's perfectly appropriate to answer. If you believe in God, if you believe in Jesus, that the Bible clearly teaches that we're supposed to be Christ's representatives on earth. Let me read to you here Luke chapter 4. I'm starting in verse 16. It says, Jesus came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, as his custom was. He went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day. He stood up to read. He was handed the book of the prophet Isaiah, and when he had opened the book, he found the place where it was written. So here's what Jesus said. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he's anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. So a lot of the things that he read in that passage of Isaiah to me clearly makes references towards the awesome work that counseling does to help people remove the yoke of mental oppression that's upon people. And also one of my favorite verses in the Bible dealing with patterns of dysfunctional thinking is in Romans 12, 1 and 2. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, in view of God's mercies, offer yourself as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God, which is your reasonable service. Do not conform any longer to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So Paul clearly is making references to a transformation of the mind out of dysfunctional thinking and into a renewal of God's new way, more functional way of thinking. I hope this has been helpful. Please feel free to leave me a message if there's any further questions. Obviously, I know this is definitely not an exhaustive list of all of the different jobs and counseling that are out there or all the different questions that people can have, but I hope it's a good start. I really, really, really hope today could be the day or sometime this week that you could say, I'm going to go ahead and take that huge step. I'm going to go ahead and maybe start this appointment for the first time and confront this thing that has been nagging me or this thing that has been being a problem in my life for a while. So, hey, let me know how it goes. Send me a message. Until next time, here was Counselor Corner. We'll see you in a couple weeks.